My parents' house was filled with not only books, but with poets. You know, I think I feel so lucky to have encountered Gwendolyn Brooks not as a poet, but as a human being. She was one of the sweetest people I've ever known. I met her when I was around, 9 or 10 years old, and she and my father and mother would be yammering, and all of a sudden I'd sit down and she said, "Well, Rick, could I read you a poem?" Which makes me feel so fortunate to have grown up the way I did, where I wasn't intimidated by words or books or the people who put words in books. It was just a joyful and expansive and enlightening way to grow up. But I think Chicago never had that kind of lofty academic poetry umbrella that intimidated a lot of people. There's stuff going on at the Poetry Foundation, at the magazine, and I think kids who would walk into the foundation and go, "Oh, Christ, this is fantastic, this is beautiful," could be turned on to poetry. There were a lot of people I heard from who were friends of mine, who I've known for a long time, who were huge fans of this Poem of the Day thing. Friends with whom I went to school sent me some very amusing letters, complimentary at the end, but starting generally with, "God, I didn't know you knew how to read. I didn't know you liked poetry." So I started to think of poets I really liked, and then I tried to say, well, I wonder if Billy Collins ever wrote about February. He didn't, but I picked a Billy Collins poem anyway. I have always been a fan, though he may not be chic these days, of William Shakespeare. I think the guy, let's face it, the guy could write. Let's face it. And then, I thought of my old friend Patricia Smith, who I knew at the newspaper when she was a teenage copy kid running errands for reporters. And I watched Patty, as I always have called her, Patty Ann, with due respect to her stature now. I watched her grow. I may have seen her first live performance at the Green Mill. Could well be. And just watched her grow into a remarkable, spine-tingling talent. And so I thought, well, it's an old friend, I'll put her in. It's certainly an old friend who's a good poet. It was really, really a treat. I discovered some new works and was blissfully reminded of some that I had long forgotten, which made it not a task at all. It really was a joyful experience for me. Well, for me, poetry, poetry has remained a life force. It's a river that runs through my life, and I think it gives me, when I need it most, I will go to poetry to seek hope. The world we live in is to my mind, I will never swear on this video, but it is a mess. It is a real mess. And instead of watching the news every night, read a poem. Read a poem.